Hi, everybody. This is Maxine. And once again, I've got my Trumpology report ready to go. We're going to take a look at Trump's chart for December 2017 and the chart of the United States for December 2017. Keep in mind that the August eclipses, and I'll go over them again, the August eclipses are at their peak right now. And I will bring those into the mix and share what I'm seeing with you. So let's take a look at Trump's chart. First of all, for the month of December 2017, the sun, which is the giver of life, wherever it lands in our chart, that is the area of life that comes alive. Now, it doesn't mean that that's a great thing necessarily. It just sheds a light on it. It awakens that area. So let's take a look at what's going on in Trump's chart for the month of December 2017 when it comes to the sun. We can see that it's in the fourth house of home, family, and real estate. With everything going on now with the country, with investigations, we can see that the area of home, family, and real estate, very, very important to him. I've described how important that is in previous Trumpology reports. Let me just touch on a couple of things that leap to mind. First of all, the sun sits on his south node. This is the area, or can be the area, that deals with the past. It also deals with loss, letting go of issues and situations. The moon, which is what we are instinctively drawn to, and where we look for our emotional security, that is what is triggered by the sun on the 12th and 13th of December. Now, when this occurs, as the sun moves over the south node and the moon, it also, prior to that, opposes his Uranus, and then it opposes his north node and sun in the 10th house. I haven't written them there because it gets very crowded. But in other words, because of the focus on home and family, there is a detraction, a distraction, a letting go on some level of his public image. And it can be that some of the investigations now going on into home, family, and real estate are involved in this letting go of some phase of his public image. Now, the beauty of the sun in Sagittarius, which it is that it trines his ascendant. And so there are blessings for him as a result. However, the energy here is pretty important from the standpoint of his emotional needs, his emotional fulfillment. And if his family, if Kushner is brought into the picture by Mueller even more than he has been, this can be upsetting to him, to Trump. Now, on the 21st, the sun enters the 5th house of children. It's also the house of fun and games. And the 5th house, because it's fun and games, deals with sex. We have all sorts of allegations flying around now. I don't have to go into them with you. We're all aware of them. And so now it can come home to roost. This is also the 5th house of speculation, taking a chance. It's a little bit different than in the United States chart. However, we're dealing with kids, we're dealing with entertainment, we're dealing with showmanship, and Trump is a master at that. The full moon on December 3rd sits on Trump's Uranus in the 10th house. Uranus is the rebel. Uranus is the unexpected. Whenever Uranus is triggered in your chart, you turn into a rebel. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. This is you busting loose, doing your thing, no matter what anybody else wants you to do. And so that is exactly what Trump is going to do. Now, you might be saying, Maxine, he's been doing that since he's been on this planet. That's true. It's even more so now. Because if you will recall, back in the summertime, when I talked about the August eclipses, I said, we ain't seen nothing yet. And as we've seen at the end of November, which is right now when I'm recording this video, we ain't seen anything like this before. And it's going to continue. So stay tuned because I've got a lot to share. Now, the full moon then brings his career to a head. It brings his uniqueness, his rebellion. Remember, the 10th house is your public image. So I'm just going to say we ain't seen nothing yet. It's about to really increase. I think that's a very politically correct way of putting it. And Uranus in Trump's chart rules his 6th house of work and health and his 7th house of partnerships. Now, the 7th house also deals with our open enemies, and we know who our country's open enemies are. And so this rebellion will probably involve one or more of our open enemies. That's what I'm going to say about that. Let's look at Venus. Venus is the planet of love. It is the lesser benefic. It's just lovely. And whatever it touches, it blesses it. All right, Venus is in his 4th house of home, family, and real estate. It also sits on his south node moon, opposing his north node sun and Uranus. And so there can be blessings involved with home, family, and real estate. Venus is also indulgence. There can be an indulgence in those areas, which is quite interesting. And with all that Trump is going through now, Venus, it could use a little Venus blessings. And there they are. Now, on the 24th, Venus enters the 5th house. And Venus is love. Wherever it is what we love and how we love. And since it's the 5th house of children, fun and games, we have to put sex into that. Movies, the theater, sports, anything that's enjoyable. He'll be having more fun. So that's a cool thing. Now, let's move forward to Mercury. And those of you who study astrology know that Mercury is getting ready to go retrograde on December 3rd, which is the day of the full moon. Very, very important. Let me just, for those of you who may not know about Mercury retrograde, those of you who know, just tune out for a second. It's very important to keep in mind that Mercury rules communication, correspondence, and transportation, our mouth and our minds. When it goes retrograde in the heavens, it appears to be moving backwards, the operative word being appears. It's not moving backwards. It looks that way from planet Earth, and it feels that way on planet Earth because things are confused. We do not begin a new project on a retrograde Mercury because either it fizzles out completely or it has to be redone within the next year. Instead, we tie up the loose ends of unfinished projects, and that's a real cool thing. This is a time to plan, to talk, to regroup, to clean out what hasn't been working and replace it with what does. Look at here. Mercury sits on Trump's south node and moon. It starts off December right there on the 5th cusp of children and fun and games and speculation and all things that are enjoyable. And it retrogrades on the day of the full moon, December 3rd, and it returns to the fourth house of home, family, real estate, and it triggers that south node moon. Now, Mercury in and of itself is simply what we think about and talk about. So there's lots of thinking and talking going on in those areas. It sits on that south node moon on the 12th and 13th, which, if you will recall, is are the same days that the sun sits on the south node and the moon. And so there is a light shining on what's going on in his home and family and real estate picture. And he's thinking about it, he's talking about it, and there can be changes made in those areas. Changes. Okay. Then Mercury goes direct 2 days before Christmas. It goes retrograde in 27 of Sag and goes direct in 13 of Sag, if I remember correctly. I'm looking here. Yeah, 13 Sag. So it will then go back over that south node moon and then enter his fifth house again. So there will be changes made in all areas relating to fourth house and fifth house. Home, family, real estate, emotional security, and fifth house fun and games of all types. Now, Mars is sitting in Trump's third house. Third house is communication, correspondence, what we say. Mars is anger, Mars is war, Mars is passion. And Mars has been in his third house for a while. And as we get closer to the end of the year, while the August eclipses are still prominent, he will be more argumentative, angrier, more direct. We can expect even more angry, provocative, inflammatory statements from Trump. So just beware. And I know that some of you have said, well, he's always doing that. Yes, and we ain't seen nothing yet. Now let's talk again about the August eclipses and what they triggered in his chart, because they bear repetition. And if you are interested in your own forecast, I'm going to be doing a video on all 12 signs, which is on my YouTube channel. And I'll cover all of these areas personally for you as well. Okay, these are the August eclipses. Look at here. The first eclipse, the lunar eclipse, was on the 7th of August. It fell in Trump's sixth house of work, health, and service, and the moon has changed. And we know from the beginning of his presidency, he has made changes in his staff, and this lunation, this lunar eclipse, just continues that. And we've come to expect that. If you've been following my Trumpology reports right from the beginning, you know that at the very beginning, after he took office, I described the solar charts, because we didn't have birth times for them, the solar charts of the people on his staff. And after a while, I just quit doing it because I couldn't keep track. There were so many that came and went. So I've just let that be, because there are other areas of more importance right now. Now, on August 21st, that's the total solar eclipse, this sat on Trump's ascendant and Mars, the ascendant being the most personal point in the chart. It's the me area, and that's another reason why I said we ain't seen nothing yet. When you have an eclipse on your ascendant, it can be a whole new life for you, which is very exciting. It also sat on his Mars. Mars is anger, Mars is war, Mars is sex, Mars is passion, and it's in his 12th house of behind-the-scenes activities. There you have it. There you have it. Now, the 12th house also deals with our hidden enemies. These can be enemies who appear to be on our team. This August eclipse is at its peak right now. The next eclipse that we experience here on planet Earth will be January 31st, 2018. So these eclipses are going to be with us until that point. When we have an eclipse on our sun, our moon, or our ascendant, the effects of that eclipse, quote unquote effects, continue well past the 3 to 4 month time frame. Okay, that's what we're looking at here. Let me double check. In Trump's chart, the August 7th eclipse, because of his employees, because of his work, it opposed Pluto in his 12th house. I haven't put Pluto there because that gets all complicated visually. Pluto in the 12th house is behind the scenes control. So he lost some of his behind the scenes control. Fortunately for him, though, that eclipse was trine his Jupiter in his second house of money, which is lovely, absolutely lovely. And it's trine his Uranus and North Node in the 10th house, forming a grand trine of protection. The solar eclipse that I just described, while sitting on his ascendant and his Mars, making him fighting mad. And we don't even see what's going on behind the scenes. There's more fighting going on behind the scenes. This eclipse was squared his midheaven. The midheaven is the 10th house of the chart. It's our public image. He's actually, because of wanting to do his own thing, fighting his own public image, as well as other people in authority. So that's the effects of these eclipses in Trump's chart. Now, let's take a look at the United States chart. Let me just get myself squared away here. And for those of you who may not know, I use the 7 Gemini rising chart. Why? Because it works for me. You use the chart that works for you. I use the chart that works for me. You know, they dovetail. The beauty of astrology is it presents so many opportunities for so many really good astrologers to select what floats their boat, what works for them. It's just a magical science. Okay, now let us look at the United States chart. There's so much going on. We're talking about the sun, and the sun shines a light on what is going on. The sun has been in the United States 7th house. Now, I'm going to give you the mundane interpretations of the 7th house. A person's birth chart that has the same houses in it as a mundane chart, a country's chart, but there are slightly different interpretations. Obviously, marriage for a person is not marriage from country to country, but it deals with contracts, it deals with relationships. So let me just, while I'm here, describe the 7th house of international affairs, war, lawsuits, contracts. It deals with the public in general. It deals with our open enemies. It deals with politics. It deals with marriage and divorce rates, and it deals with the lower courts. So I always say the 7th house is represents the others in our lives, whether in a country's chart or a personal chart. So that's where the sun has been. We have been dealing with our open enemies. I'm not going to give them any coverage. You know who they are. And we will continue to do that. On the 22nd of the month, the sun enters the United States 8th house, which deals with the treasurer, with debts, with escrow, with, drum roll please, taxes, losses, death, and all kind of secrets. When the sun goes into your 8th house in your birth chart, there's a tendency to want to be alone, to keep your own counsel, to dig beneath the surface at what is really going on. So this would deal with investigations and things that we may or may not ever know, because it is the house of secrets. Now, the full moon on December 3rd. Let me get this out here so I don't leave anything out. You know, I look at the conjunctions because conjunctions tell the tale. This full moon is on the United States Uranus and ascendant. The ascendant is the most personal point in the chart. The ascendant deals with the political mood of the country, with the attitude of the country. It deals with public health. It deals with the people and people's attitude. And when it sits on Uranus, when that full moon sits on Uranus, there can be rebellion. There really can. It can be in reaction to what comes about from our open enemies. However, this is very important to keep in mind, and I'll go over it a little bit more for you because there's more to it. The full moon on December 18th is in 26 of Sagittarius. 26 of Sag. Oh, excuse me. I'm looking at the full moon. Excuse me. The full moon, let me get this right, on December 3rd. The full moon on December 3rd is in 11 Gemini 40. It trines the midheaven, which helps Trump's public image. It helps the country's public image. And I say Trump's because he is the 10th house of our chart. So how great is that? However, this can initiate a great deal of rebellion, because when we have a full moon, that's what comes, it brings things to a head, and the people's attitude comes to a head at that point. Now, the new moon on the 18th of the month is in 26 Sagittarius, and this can be quite lovely. It sits on the sun, which is it amplifies the sun's position in our country's chart. And the thing that's so interesting to me about this particular new moon in 26 of Sagittarius is that it opposes Uranus and Mars, the midpoint between them. This lunation, this new moon, is in 26 of Sag. It is not the midpoint. I misspoke. It is in opposition to Mars. Mars is war. Mars is anger on the part of the populace, on the part of the people. So what we've got here is anger. Now you might say, well, it's in opposition. Yeah, it's in opposition, but it still triggers Mars. I hope I'm being clear. I got confused for a minute in looking at the full moon, but with the new moon in opposition to Mars, hopefully this is a more internal thing. The 7th house of our open enemies, that is where the new moon is. We react to that. And because it is in opposition, there can be a loss of energy, a loss of power. But when Mars is triggered, Mars is triggered. I think, though, looking at it from a very positive standpoint, which I really prefer to do, the new moon in opposition to Mars indicates that there can be some contract, some agreement that we make with another country, perhaps, something legal that comes about that helps dissipate some of the personal anger that the populace feels. I hope that's being clear. Okay. Now, Venus. Venus is love. Venus represents blessings. It is in the 6th house of work, health, and service. And we're talking about health, which can be the Health Care Act, of course. Our jobs, our pets, our food, police and fire department. This looks quite lovely. On the 7th of December, Venus moves into the 7th house. This once again deals with international affairs, our open enemies. It deals with politics. It deals with lawsuits. It deals with the lower courts. And so this can bring protection and blessings. On the 25th, on Christmas, it moves into that 8th house and brings blessings when it comes to the Treasury, when it comes to taxes, when it comes to any of our financial losses. So there is that protection and love from Venus. I love that. Very, very important. Let's keep going. Mercury goes retrograde. Very interesting. When Mercury goes retrograde, it goes retrograde in the 7th house. Once again, international affairs, war, open enemies, everything we've talked about, the public. And so our contracts, our negotiations with others are going to be unsettled at this point in time, because this is the time of redoing things. Now, Mercury, of course, is going to go retrograde, as I mentioned, on the 3rd of December, and it will go direct on the 23rd. This is the opposition. This is what I was looking for before when I misspoke. It sits at the opposition. It sits in opposition to the midpoint of Uranus and Mars. And hopefully this will indicate when it goes direct, some form of negotiation, some form of contract, which will dissipate some of the rebellion, some of the anger, some of the impatience that we are feeling as a people. This is a very powerful time. Keep this in mind. Mercury goes direct on December 23rd. December 23rd. On Christmas, Venus enters the 8th house. This can be a very positive turning point for us in our negotiations and relations with other countries. It can also bring about some sort of agreement. It'll not while it's retrograde, because whatever happens when it's retrograde has to be redone, as we know. But when it goes direct on the 23rd, there can be progress made in our international relations, lawsuits, any potential wars that are out there, the public, the lower courts, all of our relationships. So there can be new agreements signed. This would be awesome. And let's look at Mars. Mars, action, energy, war, passion. In the 6th house of the working class, the military, health, jobs, civil servants, food. Whenever I think of food, I think of Puerto Rico. You know, they could sure use some more help over there. Police and fire department. On the 14th, it sits on the United States vertex. This is our karmic role in life. So watch for the 14th for there to be some, Mars is anger. It can be gunfire. It can be war. This would be more domestic, of course, dealing with the workers, all workers. It also deals with health. So we're talking about the health bill as well. Now, let me go over the August eclipses that are at their peak right now. And again, I'm dealing mainly with conjunctions because conjunctions tell the tale. I will add some more things, however, because I think it's important right now. Those of you who study astrology want all the aspects. Those of you who don't study astrology may be overwhelmed with the astrological information. I feel as an astrologer, it's important that I share it. Okay, on August 7th, we had a lunar eclipse that sat on our midheaven, that's our public image, and the moon, which is part of our public image, our Aquarius moon. The 10th house, which is what this is, rules the president. And so that indicated change in our public image, change in the president's approach, a more emotional approach, if you will, even though the moon's in Aquarius. It was trine Mars in the first house, which was very helpful to the attitude of the public, and trine Saturn in our 5th house, which is very helpful in our dealings with children, with fun, the entire concept of fun, as I mentioned, in all of its aspects. This can be very helpful in what we're going through now, the Jupiter in Scorpio stuff about allegations of sexual impropriety. So this can be very helpful to us because it trines our Saturn, which is a more traditional approach. It can deal with public hearings, with teachers, with stadiums, sports of all types. The biggest aspect, the midheaven and the moon. Change in our public image. Change in the president. And possibly, as some of us have seen, possibly the change in the presidency. Now, the solar eclipse, the total solar eclipse on August 21st fell in our 4th house of home, family, and real estate in a mundane chart. It's the party out of power. So that's the Democrats. Domestic affairs, weather, our weather is crazy. Farmers, builders, crops, and seniors. And I threw seniors in, not simply because I am one, but because with the health care bill and tax reform, seniors are raising many questions. Seniors are very concerned about longevity with taxes and health being presented the way they are right now. So it's a very interesting aspect. This particular eclipse also deals with domestic matters. And in the United States chart, we have Pluto, the planet of control or transformation, in our 9th house. This eclipse is quincunx that Pluto, so that we are adjusting our relationships with those foreigners, foreign countries who would attempt to control us. The 9th house is where Pluto is, and that deals with the upper courts, with foreign travel, higher education, religion, science, the Supreme Court, insurance, and world trade, among other things. The universities come in, higher education come into the picture. So we are readjusting our relationship with those areas. It's neither good nor bad, it's an adjustment. However, in view of everything else going on in our world today, it's still iffy as to how it's going to manifest. So, that's a lot to take in. I hope I've been clear. I don't know if I have. I've given you all the information I know. If you have questions, of course, contact me at MaxineTaylor.com. If you would like me to do your own chart, if you would like your own forecast for 2018, go to my website right now, MaxineTaylor.com. I am offering a holiday special, which is your personal forecast for the coming year, for 2018, on video for a ridiculous price, incredibly low. The reason I'm doing this is because at the beginning of every year, I think it's very important for everyone to have their forecast for the coming year, so that no matter what's going on in the world, no matter what's going on with government, you know what you need to do to create the life that you want for yourself. Light workers in particular, it's very important for you to know that you are here at this point in time for a beautiful reason. And while the world can become somewhat discouraging at times, if you know your own forecast, you can use that as your North Star, as your guide. So, with all that in mind, may the stars shine brightly on you and yours, your country, and our world.